Good morning and welcome to this episode of the Introverts and Business podcast. This is episode number 8 and we're honored today to have Elyse Archer with Six Figure Sales Coaching join us here from the lovely downtown Capitol Club in Raleigh. And Elyse, first of all, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Elyse and I have known each other for about 5 years now, I think, and it's been just over a year now, right, since you started your six-figure sales coaching business. Last summer, Elyse and I worked together on the Triangle Sales Think Tank, which is still up and running. It's actually going to be meeting tonight for those of you who happen to be watching this today. We post it. And I brought Elyse on the show because I thought she had a lot of interesting and valuable things to share about the experience of starting a business, and particularly the area of sales is so important for small business owners that I really look forward to hearing some of the things that you have to share with us. But to start things off, Elyse, do you want to just tell us a little bit about your business and how you got into this area?
Sure, yeah. So I've always been in sales of some sort. Even from the time when I was a young child, I was selling toys door to door. And funny enough, I ended up going to school for journalism. I went to college for journalism, thought that was what I was going to do. Very quickly realized that I'd probably never be able to pay my bills on a journalism salary. So as soon as I got out of school, I went into advertising sales. I did that for probably about 9 years or so. And the interesting thing that happened while I was doing that is I was always a top producer, so I always did well, but it was always really hard. So I was someone who would just run myself into the ground, getting up at 3 in the morning, going to bed at 10 at night, working down to the bone, just trying to achieve these high numbers. And it was because I didn't have any good systems in place to help me do that. And so I spent several years really doing well on the outside, but struggling internally because it was so difficult. It wasn't until I picked up a book called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, which is amazing. If you haven't read it, you should definitely go read it, that my eyes opened up to the whole world, really, of personal development and of the fact that if we work on bettering ourselves every day and learning new systems and reading and studying and improving our craft, whether that's sales or blogging or whatever the thing is that you do, the personal gains you can make are incredible. So once I started diving into the world of personal development and improving myself, within a year, my income increased by about 48%, and I got so much more time back in my day. All of a sudden, I was actually sleeping semi-normal hours, and I felt this new incredible amount of energy and enthusiasm towards something that before had been really burning me out. So it was that revelation and that epiphany that things could be different and sales could actually be fun and it could be enjoyable and I could feel energetic and happy while I'm doing it, that led me to want to teach other salespeople how to do that same thing. And my goal and my hope was that in going into coaching, I could help other salespeople create systems and strategies that work for them to where they can make a lot of money, but they can have time with their family too, and just overall be a 10 out of 10 in every area of their life. So that's kind of the backstory, and that's what led me to take the leap last year and go into coaching full time.
Well, there's a lot of good stuff in there. Work-life balance is obviously a big thing for a lot of salespeople, time management, and actually the compound effect is on my reading list. I've got a copy of it. I've not read it yet except for the first couple of pages, but yeah. I'm definitely looking forward to delving into that myself. But there's something in particular I want to touch on that you touched on a little bit already. So you know that the theme of this podcast is helping those of us that are the introverted side of the personality spectrum. You talked about how sales can be fun, and I think there's a lot of people out there that might think that sales is inherently not fun. And so I got a couple of questions for you on that. But first of all, let me just ask you, where do you put yourself on the introvert-extrovert spectrum?
That's a good question, because you asked me that ahead of time, and I had to think about it. I think I'm somewhere solidly in the middle. I love people. I love interacting with people. But I'm also usually the first person to leave a party. So what I've found is that if I'm in an interaction with someone where I'm helping them with something or we're doing something business related, I love it. I'm on fire. Like, that's where I draw my energy. But as far as just being social for the sake of being social, that's not really me. So I don't know, maybe I'm just messed up. I don't know what that means.
Well, it's funny because a lot of times the most outgoing people that are at the center of their communities, I found in my experience, turn out to be closet introverts. So now I actually figured you would probably be a full-blown extrovert just from how I've known you before. But part of what I was curious about is going back to what you said about sales being fun, or the possibility of sales being fun. In particular, I think most people that identify as introverts probably would not use sales and fun in the same sentence. So could you just tell us a little bit about what was it that kind of allowed that to come unlocked for you and allowed you to experience sales as a fun and energizing process? Like, what was it that made that possible?
You know, I think the big difference is it depends on where your focus is. So if your focus is on yourself while you're selling, you're going to be thinking the whole time about what's this person thinking of me? Are they going to buy from me? What objections are they going to give? Do they like my product? Do they not like my product? You're going to be thinking about yourself the entire time. That is the fastest way to make yourself feel really nervous about whatever you're doing. When you can switch your focus off of yourself and onto your customer and just really, really look at how can I give to them in this interaction? It may be by connecting them with my product or service. It may also be by recommending something else. If I hear in what they're saying that they really need a different solution, it may be by recommending a different resource or making a connection for them in the community who you think would be valuable to them. So when you take that focus off of yourself and when you see sales as simply connecting you with the solution that you need for your problem, all of a sudden it's not really scary anymore. So one of the guys that I work with, Rory Baden, he has a quote that I think is awesome, and it sounds maybe a little cheesy when you first hear it, but I think it's so true. And he says, it's hard to be nervous when your heart is on service. And so it's really, really, I've seen it show up in my own life. If you're just focused on how can I serve this person, all of a sudden those nerves and that anxiety that we feel about selling, tends to go away.
Very interesting. So it sounds like it's about really making it impersonal, and it kind of reminds me of some of the things that I've recently been taking an improv class lately. Cool. And remember one of the things that the instructor was saying was that if you focus on making the rest of the people on the stage look good and taking your attention off of yourself, a lot of stage fright disappears. Yes. So it sounds kind of like sales may be similar in a lot of different ways.
I like that.
Now, you said about the compound effect. I would kind of go back to that for a second. Was there anything in that book that you kind of drew on when you were kind of putting this together or really developing that area of making sales fun? Was there a direct connection there at all?
Mm-hmm. You know, I think one of the biggest takeaways from the compound effect in relation to sales is how continual learning, even if it's just little chunks at a time, will add up to make a huge difference. So the whole idea behind the compound effect, not to totally take away the punchline here, but you can probably imagine from the title, right? It's our small daily choices add up to big results. And that would be whether positive or negative. So in the world of sales, I'm a big believer in being what I would call a student of your game. So I actually wrote a post about it this week. Constantly learning, constantly improving ourselves, because we actually have the highest income potential of any job out there in sales. And the ironic thing is a lot of us go to college to get a degree in, like I did, journalism or something else, because we think that's what we're going to do when we spend a bunch of money and spend a bunch of time learning in relation to that. And then for whatever reason, we don't end up doing that, and we get out of school and we go into sales. And so many of us stop learning, right? And it's so ironic because now we actually have the opportunity to earn more than we ever did before, but we're not taking the time to continuously grow and study and practice and drill and rehearse the way that we were in school. And so the idea that I took from the compound effect in relation to sales was if I just take 10 minutes a day to read or to learn or to study something related to my skill set with sales, then I can get big results and make a big impact over time. And so it got to the point where it was almost like going back to school, and I was, and I still do this today, waking up, studying scripts, studying material related to closing or prospecting or personal brand building or whatever it was that I was focused on learning at that time to help increase my sales. And so it's like, let's go back to school, let's roll up our sleeves, let's learn. And it's fun when we're learning and when we're constantly engaging and trying out new things that we learn throughout the day.
So it sounds like, from what you're talking about, when you focus on the continual education and creating those consistent habits, the 10 minutes a day, those types of things, that over time starts to make sales less intimidating as you become more. It sounds like there's the piece that you didn't say directly, but I wonder if this is part of it, is when you begin to develop yourself as an expert. Have you found that that has a correlation to your confidence and your ability to sell?
Oh, yeah.
And does that tie into the educating yourself on a daily basis?
Yes. I mean, there's nothing that's a better confidence booster than knowing something so well that you can't get it wrong, right? I mean, I think a lot of people say, okay, I need to learn this script that I'm going to use in my introduction with a customer just until I get it right. No. When you feel really confident is when you can't get that wrong, because then you can actually get out of your head and start really listening to your customer, and that's when that confidence builds.
Yeah, I guess I kind of think of that as like when you know that you're objectively right about something. Like if somebody tries to tell me that 2 + 2 = 5, I'm not going to back down or start to doubt whether I know that the answer is right. Versus I think if it's subjective, maybe then there's more of those gray areas. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say 100%.
Yeah. Let's see. So there's one of the other things I wanted to kind of get back to for a little bit here is when if for those out there in the audience that feel like they maybe don't have the personality to be able to sell, that's something that I had that perception when I was selling Cutco knives back in the day. And I know a handful of other folks I've run into that have said, like, well, it's only a certain type of personality that it can sell, and I'm just too introverted to be able to do it. What advice might you have for somebody that is trying to overcome what seems to be an inherent limitation in terms of that regard? Like, is it just a matter of educating yourself every day, those things that we've talked about, or is there any other components that you feel like would be important to fold into your daily routine?
Well, a couple of different things, and I'd actually be curious to get your input on this as somebody who may be a little bit farther along the introversion spectrum. But at the end of the day, I think sales is really all about two things. It's about teaching, and it's about connecting. So if we as salespeople can teach our prospect about whatever they're trying to learn about, whatever problem they have, and then as well, if we can help connect them with the solution or connect them with the person who can help them even if it's not us, my feeling is that we've done our job. Now, I'm curious to get your input on, if I was an introvert thinking about, okay, all I really have to do is teach and connect, is that still something that seems intimidating and uncomfortable, or is that something that seems maybe a little bit more
Not to me
manageable?
right now. I try to suspend my own opinion with these podcasts, but since you asked directly, I'm happy to give you my perspective on it, which is that I personally don't think that there's any requirement of having any particular personality type. I think it's just a matter of finding the strategy that's naturally suited to who you are. And I think that the strategies that are conventionally taught for sales tend to lend themselves more automatically to an extroverted personality type. And for example, get out there and shake every hand in the room, put yourself out there, all that type of stuff. I think it's understandably can be intimidating for an introvert to hear that kind of advice and say, well, gee, I just can't do that. I don't necessarily think you have to. The analogy I like to use is there's many paths up the mountain, and you just have to find the path that's right for you. But at the same time, I think that it is also important to be willing to stretch yourself a little bit and do things that are not automatically right in the center of your comfort zone. Like, I don't think it makes sense to go radically outside of your comfort zone in one fell swoop, but I think it does make sense to go to the outer edge of your comfort zone and try to expand that little by little. So that's kind of my take on that. Now, was that actually the question you were asking? Or?
I think so. Yeah,
okay.
no, I think so. And I think it really boils down to two things. So the first is a mindset shift. So if sales is intimidating to you, if you can start to really focus on, in every interaction you have with somebody, whether it's checking out at the grocery store, or talking to your neighbor as you walk by them, or interacting with a customer, if you can simply focus on how can I give to this person in this interaction, that to me is when the fun starts to begin. So giving could be as simple as giving a compliment, or it could be giving some advice to your customer. It could be giving your product or service. Like, think about ways that you can give. It's kind of like the Zig Ziglar quote: if you help enough other people get what they want in life, you'll ultimately get everything that you want as well. And so if you focus on that and have that mindset, it takes a lot of the pressure off.
It also reminds me of something Seth Godin said once, as one of my favorite authors, that he said the phrase pay attention. If you give somebody your attention, you're actually paying them in a sense, because you're giving them something that's valuable, especially right now in today's world where our attention is just bombarded from all directions with different messages people are trying to interrupt us with, that if you give somebody your full undivided attention, that will not go unnoticed.
Yes.
So I think that kind of ties to what you were just saying.
Exactly. I completely agree. Yeah. And it's really just about taking that focus off of yourself and putting it on the other person. And then the other piece, too, that helps is if you can get some solid systems in place. A lot of times in sales, whether we're introverted or extroverted, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to make every deal happen. Now, you and I both know that there are factors that are completely outside of our control. I may be trying to sell you coaching services, but your brother may do it, or your best friend may do it, or you may be having a crappy day and you're just mad at the world.
Or I'm just completely uncoachable and make it out of my own way. Yeah.
Right. So there are certain factors that I can't control. And when we put all of our focus and our self-worth on things that we can't control, we're going to feel that crazy emotional roller coaster that's the up and down, and it's all going to be dependent on whether or not somebody buys from me. We can't control that. So when you take the pressure off of yourself to make every sale happen, and rather just focus on what are the things that are within my control every day. So if I have an income goal of $100,000 this year, okay, cool. How many customers do I need to hit that goal? Based on my current closing ratios, how many people do I need to present to get one customer? How many phone calls or messages do I need to send on LinkedIn to set that number of appointments? And really just reverse engineer that goal. And then what I would do is I would redefine success for myself. Not to, does every person buy from me who I talk to, but did I do the activity today that I committed to, knowing that if I do these things consistently over a period of time, I'm going to hit that goal. And when you redefine success in that way and put the parameters on things that you can control, you take the pressure off, and it also becomes more fun when you do that.
Yeah, no, that makes it. Also, to me, when I hear about that, it also takes the excuses away, because I either chose to do the activity or I chose not to, but I can't blame it on something I had no control over.
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing that happens when you do that is that you actually sell more, because you're not on that emotional roller coaster anymore, and you're not feeling that fear about will every single deal go through. That's not the focus anymore.
Perfect. Well, we're just about at the end of our time for this podcast, so just really quickly before we wrap up, did you want to say anything about the Triangle Sales Think Tank, or any of those other things that somebody out there in the audience might participate in?
Yeah, sure. So if you're local in the Raleigh or Durham area, we've got a great group specifically for salespeople. It's by salespeople for salespeople. Dave, our buddy Neil Isaacs, and I started it about a year ago this time, actually. And we're having a meeting tonight. We meet every first Thursday of the month at Kamado. I'm sorry, every first Thursday.
Third Thursday. Or is it first?
Today is the 9th. Whatever.
Today is the 9th.
I think it's every second Thursday. I should have known that before I said that. Every second Thursday of the month at Kamado Grill. I'm a big believer in giving as much away as possible for free. So every month we gather together to get new information, get new content, learn from each other, grow from each other. Tonight we've got a great speaker. Dan Scala will be speaking on vision, which is going to be incredible. So please feel free to come out or check us out on Meetup. If you search on Meetup for Triangle Sales Think Tank, you can view our upcoming events, and would love to see you either tonight or in July.
And those of you who watched the past podcast saw Dan Scala was a previous guest on here, so I'm sure it's going to be a great talk if you can make it out tonight. Thank you again, Elyse, for being on the show. I hope you out in the audience got some great tidbits today that you can get out there and sell more. And until then, we'll see you on our next episode. Take care for now.